On this Monday night, the world's attention is focused right there on the White House. In just moments, Donald Trump will unveil his nominee for the Supreme Court. And the impact of that pick will likely be felt long after Trump leaves office. So tonight, the stakes are high, and so is the drama. A primetime TV event, at least 4 contenders, all seeking that one key seat on the court. We'll bring you the announcement live and break down its impact in the U.S. and beyond.
Also tonight, what the loss of Greyhound bus service means for Western Canada. And rescuers in Thailand preparing for another high-risk operation tonight to free the 4 boys and their coach still inside that cave. What we know about the team that has captured the world's attention. This is The National.
Well, Donald Trump is putting on a really big show tonight, teasing out his nomination of a new Supreme Court justice. It's one of the greatest powers a president has to shape his country, and Trump is reveling in the moment. Let's have a look here. This is a live feed in the East Room of the White House. Any moment now, Donald Trump is expected. This president who's so conscious of timing and ratings and drama has certainly been capitalizing on the drama of this moment and this decision. His opportunity to fundamentally change the character of the U.S. Supreme Court for a generation or more. Well, reports are leaking out that he's already chosen 53-year-old Brett Kavanaugh, who was the clerk for Justice Kennedy, the man he's replacing. Strong conservative credentials. But let's just see if that is really where President Trump is going with this. One thing you can be certain of, he will choose a staunch conservative. Let's listen.
My fellow Americans, tonight I speak to you from the East Room of the White House regarding one of the most profound responsibilities of the President of the United States, and that is the selection of a Supreme Court justice. I've often heard that other than matters of war and peace, this is the most important decision a president will make. The Supreme Court is entrusted with the safeguarding of the crown jewel of our republic, the Constitution of the United States. 12 days ago, Justice Anthony Kennedy informed me of his decision to take senior status on the Supreme Court, opening a new vacancy. For more than 4 decades, Justice Kennedy served our nation with incredible passion and devotion. I'd like to thank Justice Kennedy for a lifetime of distinguished service. In a few moments, I will announce my selection for Justice Kennedy's replacement. This is the second time I have been faced with this task. Last year, I nominated Judge Neil Gorsuch to replace the late, great Justice Antonin Scalia. I chose Justice Gorsuch because I knew that he, just like Justice Scalia, would be a faithful servant of our Constitution. We are honored to be joined tonight by Justice Scalia's beloved wife, Maureen. Maureen? Thank you, Maureen. Both Justice Kennedy and Justice Scalia were appointed by a president who understood that the best defense of our liberty and a judicial branch immune from political prejudice were judges that apply the Constitution as written. That president happened to be Ronald Reagan. For this evening's announcement, we are joined by Ronald Reagan's Attorney General, Edwin Meese. Ed? And Ed, I speak for everyone. Thank you for everything you've done to protect our nation's great legal heritage. In keeping with President Reagan's legacy, I do not ask about a nominee's personal opinions. What matters is not a judge's political views, but whether they can set aside those views to do what the law and the Constitution require. I am pleased to say that I have found, without doubt, such a person. Tonight, it is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. I know the people in this room very well. They do not stand and give applause like that very often, so they have some respect. And Brett's wife, Ashley, and their two daughters, Margaret and Liza, have joined us on the podium. And thank you and congratulations to you as a family. Thank you. Judge Kavanaugh has impeccable credentials, unsurpassed qualifications, and a proven commitment to equal justice under the law. A graduate of Yale College and Yale Law School, Judge Kavanaugh currently teaches at Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown. Throughout legal circles, he is considered a judge's judge, a true thought leader among his peers. He is a brilliant jurist with a clear and effective writing style, universally regarded as one of the finest and sharpest legal minds of our time. And just like Justice Gorsuch, he excelled as a clerk for Justice Kennedy. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. Judge Kavanaugh has devoted his life to public service. For the last 12 years, he has served as a judge on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals with great distinction, authoring over 300 opinions which have been widely admired for their skill, insight, and rigorous adherence to the law. Among those opinions are more than a dozen that the Supreme Court has adopted as the law of the land. Beyond his great renown as a judge, he is active in his community. He coaches CYO basketball, serves meals to needy families, and, having learned from his mom, who is a school teacher in D.C., tutors children at local elementary schools. There is no one in America more qualified for this position, and no one more deserving. I want to thank the senators on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, for their consultation and advice during the selection process. This incredibly qualified nominee deserves a swift confirmation and robust bipartisan support. The rule of law is our nation's proud heritage. It is the cornerstone of our freedom. It is what guarantees equal justice. And the Senate now has the chance to protect this glorious heritage by sending Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. And now, Judge, the podium is yours.
Mr. President, thank you. Throughout this process, I've witnessed firsthand your appreciation for the vital role of the American judiciary. No president has ever consulted more widely or talked with more people from more backgrounds to seek input about a Supreme Court nomination. Mr. President, I am grateful to you, and I'm humbled by your confidence in me. Thank you. 30 years ago, President Reagan nominated Anthony Kennedy to the Supreme Court. The framers established that the Constitution is designed to secure the blessings of liberty. Justice Kennedy devoted his career to securing liberty. I am deeply honored to be nominated to fill his seat on the Supreme Court. My mom and dad are here. I am their only child. When people ask what it's like to be an only child, I say, it depends on who your parents are. I was lucky. My mom was a teacher. In the 1960s and 70s, she taught history at two largely African-American public high schools in Washington, D.C., McKinley Tech and H.D. Woodson. Her example taught me the importance of equality for all Americans. My mom was a trailblazer. When I was 10, she went to law school and became a prosecutor. My introduction to law came at our dinner table when she practiced her closing arguments. Her trademark line was, "Use your common sense. What rings true? What rings false?" That's good advice for a juror and for a son. One of the few women prosecutors at that time, she overcame barriers and became a trial judge. The president introduced me tonight as Judge Kavanaugh, but to me, that title will always belong to my mom. My dad went to law school at night while working full-time. He has an unparalleled work ethic and has passed down to me his passion for playing and watching sports. I love him dearly. The motto of my Jesuit high school was "Men for Others." I've tried to live that creed. I've spent my career in public service from the executive branch and the White House to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. I've served with 17 other judges, each of them a colleague and a friend. My judicial philosophy is straightforward. A judge must be independent and must interpret the law, not make the law. A judge must interpret statutes as written, and a judge must interpret the Constitution as written, informed by history and tradition and precedent. For the past 11 years, I've taught hundreds of students, primarily at Harvard Law School. I teach that the Constitution's separation of powers protects individual liberty. And I remain grateful to the dean who hired me, Justice Elena Kagan. As a judge, I hire 4 law clerks each year. I look for the best. My law clerks come from diverse backgrounds and points of view. I am proud that a majority of my law clerks have been women. I am part of the vibrant Catholic community in the D.C. area. The members of that community disagree about many things, but we are united by a commitment to serve. Father John Ensler is here. 40 years ago, I was an altar boy for Father John. These days, I help him serve meals to the homeless at Catholic Charities. I have two spirited daughters, Margaret and Liza. Margaret loves sports, and she loves to read. Liza loves sports, and she loves to talk. I have tried to create bonds with my daughters like my dad created with me. For the past 7 years, I have coached my daughter's basketball teams. The girls on the team call me Coach K. I am proud of our Blessed Sacrament team that just won the city championship. My daughters and I also go to lots of games. Our favorite memory was going to the historic Notre Dame-UConn women's basketball game at this year's Final Four. Unforgettable. My wife, Ashley, is a West Texan, a graduate of Abilene Cooper Public High School and the University of Texas. She is now the town manager of our community. We met in 2001 when we both worked in the White House. Our first date was on September 10th, 2001. The next morning, I was a few steps behind her as the Secret Service shouted at all of us to sprint out the front gates of the White House because there was an inbound plane. In the difficult weeks that followed, Ashley was a source of strength for President Bush and for everyone in this building. Through bad days and so many better days since then, she has been a great wife and an inspiring mom. I thank God every day for my family. Tomorrow, I begin meeting with members of the Senate, which plays an essential role in this process. I will tell each senator that I revere the Constitution. I believe that an independent judiciary is the crown jewel of our constitutional republic. If confirmed by the Senate, I will keep an open mind in every case, and I will always strive to preserve the Constitution of the United States and the American rule of law. Thank you, Mr. President.
So that is the scene that has been unfolding in the East Room of the White House tonight. You see there President Trump alongside his brand new Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. As you heard the new nominee say there that this is a man who was introduced to law at the dinner table. His mother was a judge. He said she will always be the one who holds the title of Judge Kavanaugh. He says his job is to interpret the law, not to make the law. That he believes, just as the president said, that an independent judiciary is the crown jewel of the republic. Also, Donald Trump, in introducing him there, made it clear, yes, this is the second Supreme Court nominee Trump has announced in just over 18 months being in office. And as he said himself, other than matters of war and peace, this is the most significant decision a president can make. So our Paul Hunter is standing by at the White House. All of 37 seconds to interpret that. Paul, a serious political fight still to come over this nominee. What's next?
Well, audition speech dispensed with. Now the fight begins. Indeed, as you note, Trump's nominee now needs to be confirmed by a majority of votes in the Senate. And for the moment, Republicans control a majority of votes in the Senate, if only just. So here we go.
To be clear, it's Donald Trump who nominates, but it's the U.S. Senate that turns thumbs up or down on the next Supreme Court justice.
Enormously important issues hang in the balance.
And today, even before Trump's pick tonight, the battling had begun. Democrats, with their worry that Trump's new nominee will, if confirmed, work to undermine Obamacare and reverse U.S. laws on abortion rights. So when they get a chance to ask, as they will, they'll want answers.
The next nominee has an obligation, a serious and solemn obligation, to share their personal views on these legal issues.
The goal for Democrats is to persuade even one or two Republicans to vote no, with an eye to pressing Trump for a more centrist second choice, all the while reminding voters in the looming midterm elections of what's at stake.
We've seen the same movie time after time.
Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who, by the way, blocked Barack Obama's final Supreme Court pick in 2016, today slammed Democrats for always pushing back on Republican choices.
No matter their qualifications, no matter their record, no matter their reputation, it's the same hyperbole, the same accusations, the same old story.
He wants the best of the best on the Supreme Court.
Meanwhile, the ad war is underway. This one from a conservative group looking for all the world like an election-style attack ad targets Democrats.
Like they did before, extremists will lie and attack the nominee. But don't be fooled. President Trump's list includes the best of the best.
Liberal groups counter with this reminder. Trump has long said he wants a judge who will end abortions. Senator Collins, name-checked at the bottom, is Susan Collins, a Republican who champions abortion rights. A swayable vote. Maybe. All of it highlighting what the confirmation process here has become. Yes, you need a strong legal pedigree, but, says a former clerk for Anthony Kennedy, whose pending retirement opened the door for tonight, views on those divisive issues matter.
They need to be capable and qualified and intellectually up to the task. But in addition, I think both the public certainly and the president is expecting some certainty about their predilections on these particular cases.
So, Paul, key thing there, you mentioned the coming midterms. How much of a factor is this kind of thing in energizing voters?
This will remind voters on both sides of the stakes in this. The president chooses the nominee, but it's up to the Senate to confirm. So control of the Senate, which is always at play, typically at play anyway in midterms, is hugely important and sure to energize voters, as I say, in both parties. But it's worth noting that historically, the ability to shape the Supreme Court has energized Republican voters far more than it has Democrat voters. In fact, that's one of the reasons Donald Trump is resident of the White House. It's the kind of issue that will put Republican voters out to the polls. In Trump's case in 2016, setting aside perhaps other concerns they had about him, they wanted to be able to help shape the Supreme Court. So they will be energized on both sides, but historically, Republicans more so. We'll see how it plays out this fall.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much. And Ian, later in the hour, what could this nominee and a shift to the Supreme Court actually mean for Canada? We have a panel of legal minds standing by for some analysis.
That is an intriguing question, Adrian. For now, though, let's turn to the other big developing story of the night, the cave rescue in Thailand. It is already Tuesday morning in Chiang Rai, and currently 5 people are still inside. So far, more than half of a boys' soccer team has been rescued from those caves in northern Thailand, and it has been a harrowing operation. 4 more boys and their coach now waiting to make that difficult journey out. Oxygen levels in the cave are low. Bad weather is looming. Fire Stewart is in Thailand near the staging area, not far from the caves.
Every time an ambulance goes by with its lights flashing, followed by a helicopter overhead, there's a sense of anticipation. The sequence of events has come to mean another boy has made it out of the cave. And on Monday, another 4 were rescued. They were taken to the hospital to join their 4 teammates on a floor set aside just for them. All have to stay in isolation at first, which means emotional family reunions will have to wait. The boys are said to be doing well. A few even asked for a special Thai basil chicken dish, but officials say they aren't getting that yet. Their menu includes simple food like porridge. Officials haven't released the names of the 8 boys who were rescued, and some of the relatives have said even they haven't been told anything. By all accounts, though, the coach is still underground, sitting on that rocky ledge with the remaining 4 players. 25-year-old Ekapol Chatawong was once ordained as a monk, and his aunt says the boys' families trust him. He loves kids very much, she says. He's a very good person. He takes care of kids, very diligent. Not far from the entrance to the cave lies the community of Mesai, where a number of the boys go to school. 14-year-old Katana is friends with some of them.
Many Thai people have been working to rescue them and help their families.
The next rescue attempt is set to begin in the coming hours after the divers have rested and refueled. The teams have led the boys out of the cave faster than expected because the water levels have stayed low. This has made it easier for them to get out. Danish diver Ivan Karadzik says one of the biggest challenges in the cave is communication.
Well, one of the very difficult things in the cave is talking. You need to be very close. If you're more than just 5-10 meters away, the echo and the water and everything, it's incredibly hard to understand.
But what's different today is that all the rain they had predicted and feared has arrived. So officials will be watching the water level inside that cave very closely when they start the next and possibly final rescue. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Chiang Rai.
The team went into this cave together, but of course now they've been separated, some in hospital, some awaiting rescue. As David Common reports, we're getting a better picture of who they are and how they've been supporting each other.
When the boys stepped off their bikes and out of their shoes at the cave entrance 2 weeks ago, it was Firapat Sompiangai's 16th birthday, night to his friends. The team reportedly entered the cave in part to celebrate and brought snacks for an impromptu party, snacks which helped sustain them.
How many of you? 13. Brilliant.
That now famous reply came from 14-year-old Adul Samon, the only English speaker. Although officials won't name who the first 4 to be rescued were, 13-year-old Mark is said to be one of them, along with 14-year-olds Tern, Nick, who wrote to his parents that he wants to go for Thai barbecue, and Note, whose grandmother has maintained a vigil for him.
Grandma loves you the most in the whole world. I miss you dearly.
13-year-old Dom is the team's biggest motivator on the pitch and may well have played that role underground. Same age is Pong, who dreams of playing in Thailand's national team. In a letter to the outside, Mig said the SEAL team takes very good care of us. T told his parents, don't worry. 14-year-old Bu wrote to his mother promising to help in her shop if he makes it out. Titan, at 11, is the youngest. That leaves only the 25-year-old coach Ak. As much as many may blame him for taking the boys in, the former monk and an orphan himself has reportedly helped the boys meditate to stay calm. But he was the weakest, apparently insisting the boys eat what food they had left until rescue came. David Common, CBC News, Toronto.
And here's a live look at the area near the entrance of that cave in Chiang Rai. It is just after 8 a.m. Tuesday in Thailand, and we'll be bringing you any update from officials as we await word that the next operation to retrieve the 4 remaining boys and their coach gets underway. Stay with us. The National returns with much more right after this.
In a year's time, if all goes according to plan, Britain will leave the European Union. And what, you might ask, has that got to do with the humble Cornish pasty? The pasty is a symbol of Cornish tradition dating back over 200 years, culinary heritage rooted to the geography of the place.
You have to have the classic ingredients, the turnip, some people say Swede, you've got onion, you've got potato, and of course, Cornish beef.
As such, it enjoys special EU protection, kind of like a copyright. Think champagne, Scotch whiskey, or Gorgonzola cheese, all safeguarded in EU law by something called protected geographical status. The rules are strict. Pasty man Fergus Muller is on thin ice because his crimp is down the middle instead of on the side.
As long as it was made in the right way by a Cornish person, the way that my gran was taught and her, all the way down through the family, this is the way you would do it.
Cornish pasties are now said to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy here, and that's nothing to sneeze at. It might not look like it in quaint villages like this one, but Cornwall is one of the poorest regions in the United Kingdom. The worry is that without its EU classification, the door will open for competition from pasty imposters abroad, and businesses like this one will no longer be eligible for EU funding. So, potentially still some murky days ahead for the traditional Cornish pasty. But many people here in Cornwall hope that Britain will still be able to convince the European Union to keep its protected status in place in any future trade agreement. But just what that deal might look like is still very much a work in progress. And that is the story of the European Union and the Cornish pasty.
A major shift is coming in how thousands of people will move around this country. Greyhound announced today it's ending bus service in Western Canada, except for one route between Vancouver and Seattle. The cuts take effect in October, the company blaming dwindling numbers of passengers, down 41% since 2010, but still a lot of people rely on Greyhound. About 1 million passengers in Canada could be affected. British Columbia hardest hit with an average of 650,000 people riding a Greyhound each year, followed by Alberta with 380,000, Northern Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. For many people, especially in remote communities, it is more than an inconvenience. Rafi Boudjikanian spoke to some of them today.
A few months from now, this scene could be a thing of the past in Western Canada. Greyhound blames declining rural ridership, but these riders say that's not their experience.
The Prairie Provinces uses the Greyhound service extensively for work and travel and people that are, like I said, limited to mobility. It just doesn't make sense.
The skepticism echoed by towns that rely on Greyhound.
I don't buy it that Greyhound, is facing all these challenges. They could have downsized the fleet.
Greyhound pulled out of northern British Columbia this year, leaving the province to take on transport on a stretch of Highway 16 known as the Highway of Tears, where many Indigenous women and girls have gone missing. Safety a big concern now for other Indigenous communities.
When you want to make decisions that actually impact people's lives, you can't come from it from a purely economic standpoint. You have to realize that over the course of time, people have become dependent on the service that you provide.
As for Saskatchewan, it didn't completely rely on Greyhound until last year. That's when it shut down the provincially subsidized Saskatchewan Transportation Company. Now, riders like Deborah Watney are scrambling for alternatives. She often shuttles between Edmonton and her home reserve of Canoe Lake, Saskatchewan.
And it's going to be hard for me to go back and forth. I don't know, and I don't have a license. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that.
For its part, Greyhound says it's sorry about the decision, but points the finger at elected officials.
We apologize for the inconvenience this is going to cause for the people after October 31st. And I think that it's important to speak out to your local politicians about the need for the service and the need for a long-term sustainable plan.
And it's not just passengers left stranded. More than 400 Greyhound employees expect come the end of October, they'll be unemployed. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Edmonton.
Next on The National, we know tonight's pick has the potential to change the cultural and legal landscape south of the border, but what does Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee mean for this country? We break it down with our expert panel right after this.
Syria's terrifying tunnel of war. From war zones to natural disasters to humanitarian crises, a foreign correspondent's job is to put themselves in the thick of it and come back with the story.
They're lined up here because almost every single one of them is dependent on handouts.
But behind every successful deployment is a well-constructed plan. Decisions about where to sleep, where to get food, who to talk to, and how to get around are made in advance and sometimes on the spot. Nala Ayed is a veteran foreign correspondent for CBC News based in London. She's been a witness to some of the world's biggest stories, including the ongoing crisis for the Rohingya fleeing Myanmar.
So, Nala, we got some great questions from our viewers and obvious ones in some ways saying we see you in these places around the world where, people don't want to be themselves. Where do you go when we don't see you on camera? So let's start with, where do you sleep?
It's a really good question. And in the case of Bangladesh, actually, I didn't know where we would sleep when I was told where we were going exactly. So it's about doing a little bit of research, and in that case, learned very quickly that Cox's Bazar, which is not far from the border, is actually quite a large city, and that there were several hotels nearby, and we didn't have an issue finding a place. In fact, there were so many journalists. The biggest issue was just actually finding a room. But in other places, you do have to get a bit creative, and it's sometimes in the places where you least expect it. One was, for me, was in France, actually, a couple of years ago, with the very tragic crash of the Germanwings airplane, as you recall, in the Alps. It's a place I've never been. It's the Alps. You'd think there would be some hotels. It was a challenge to actually find a place, and at one point, there were local people who were coming around with their phone numbers, and offering places to stay up there. So a lot of us took advantage of that, and actually we created a bit of a live position in one of them. Other places, like, for example, Gaza, after one of the conflicts there, the border was opened on the Egyptian side. It was halfway through the night. Where do you stay when it's a place that unsafe and you don't want to be traveling around at night? Well, the local journalists we were working with suggested a home of just an ordinary family very close to the border, so that we sleep there and then move the next day to a hotel. In Haiti, we stayed also at a fixer's house. When we went to Jacmel to cover what the Canadians were doing, we stayed with Canadian troops.
Some of those sound like sort of reasonable accommodations. Have you ever had to do something that was just completely outside the frame?
Well, actually, the one that sticks in my mind always is Afghanistan, and it was actually Tora Bora while the bombing was going on across the valley where they thought that Osama bin Laden was. And in that case, there was nowhere to stay. So the locals offered a house a structure, I should say, that normally housed goats. So we just took our sleeping bags, and that's where we slept for 3 nights.
We hear this word fixer. And, in the business, we're so comfortable using this term that we don't stop to explain what we mean sometimes. So how valuable is a fixer, and what role do they play in the work that you do?
Well, the best way I like to describe it as a fixer is actually our secret weapon, because when you go to a place like Bangladesh, which I have to say that this was my very first trip there, I know nothing about Bangladesh that I haven't just read in a newspaper or in a book. And so a fixer is someone who is from that country and knows the country intimately, speaks the language, knows how to get around, and if they don't know, then they know how to access the information to find out where you need to go, where to buy things, where to sleep, what to do, who to talk to. And so usually there's a whole network of fixers that we all trust, that we ask other journalists about. For example, the one we worked with in Bangladesh is someone that is known to some other Canadian media.
I do not ask about a nominee's personal opinions. What matters is not a judge's political views, but whether they can set aside those views to do what the law and the Constitution require. I am pleased to say that I have found, without doubt, such a person.
Well, there you go. That was Donald Trump tonight, trumpeting his latest nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court. And the president's introduction notwithstanding, Brett Kavanaugh was clearly chosen with an eye to adding conservative heft to the bench. So the question tonight, what will be the impact on people in the United States and even here in Canada? Our expert panel follows the court very closely. Mark Joseph Stern is the legal affairs correspondent with Slate magazine. He's in Washington, right in the heart of the action. Christine Harrington is a professor of politics at New York University. She is also in Washington tonight. And Elie Mystal is the executive editor of AboveTheLaw.com. He joins us from New York. And Elie, I feel compelled to start with you. I know you're not one to mince words, so, have at it. What is your gut instinct about the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh?
Yeah, this is the worst of all possible worlds, right? I will leave it to Kavanaugh's former clerk, who said that if a president was interested in overturning Roe, there could be no better choice than Brett Kavanaugh. So let's start there. Roe and abortion rights in America are clearly under threat as of now. But I think this pick was made not actually as a litmus test for abortion rights. I think the litmus test here is that Kavanaugh has written extensively and powerfully, basically saying that the president cannot be indicted while he's the president. Obviously, Donald Trump is under, 8,000 different kinds of investigations. And Kavanaugh is the guy who's going to say, no, Robert Mueller, you cannot indict a sitting president. And that's probably the fifth vote that Trump needs to hang on to his job. So I think that, as usual, Trump was more self-interested than ideological with this pick.
Boy, Elie, I wish you'd speak your mind. Mark, you seem a little pensive. What do you think?
I generally agree with Ellie's assessment. I would add that this is great news for deregulators in the Trump White House. One of the chief goals of the Trump administration has been to deregulate the banking industry, the energy industry, the financial industry, as much as possible. And Brett Kavanaugh is extremely skeptical of regulatory power broadly, and also of the bureaucrats in D.C. who are tasked with implementing regulations. He has voted repeatedly to strike down laws maintaining the independence of agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He has voted to strike down regulations limiting pollution and fossil fuels. He is a quote-unquote pro-business, anti-regulation choice, and that is going to make a huge faction of the Republican Party extremely happy this evening.
Christine, given everything we're hearing here, is this a lock? I mean, we are talking about this as if it is a done deal, but is there a chance that Brett Kavanaugh could actually have a hard time in the confirmation hearing?
Well, if we pay attention to what the opposition has talked about, there could possibly be some rough going. Not so much in the hearings, but rather the backroom dickering with other members of the Senate, particularly, of course, the two women senators who have expressed support for women's reproductive privacy and may or may not support this nominee given his record, as Eli noted. On the matter of deregulation, I'm afraid the Republicans will be just, rolling over and thrilled, as Mark has already pointed out.
Okay, so I, as an outsider here, I know people have been hanging on the name, but it just seems in a way that you're talking about different degrees of conservatism here. Does the fact that it's actually Brett Kavanaugh actually matter? Mark?
Well, I think all of the top shortlist candidates were definitely very conservative. I think that Kavanaugh is about as far to the right as you could get. Arguably, another shortlister, Amy Coney Barrett, was even farther to the right. But Kavanaugh has this staunchly conservative record that will please and appease as many Republicans as you could hope for. I mean, in addition to deregulation, as Elie said, he's clearly anti-abortion. He wrote this very condescending, paternalistic decision allowing the government to block an undocumented unsuspended minor from terminating her pregnancy. He's extremely pro-gun. He would have struck down laws here in the District of Columbia that limit private citizens' access to assault weapons. He's almost certainly going to oppose marriage equality and gay rights under an originalist view of the Constitution. So I think it does matter because there were candidates on that short list like Tom Hardiman, who currently sits on the Third Circuit, who were a little bit more of an unknown there and who might have had some room to drift to the left a bit, to have a more moderate vote. Kavanaugh is, he can be a bomb thrower. He's very, very far to the right. He's not afraid to tone it down, or he doesn't want to tone it down. He's not afraid to stay as far out there as he wants so he can get results for the right-wing cause that he so obviously supports.
Ellie, how you doing?
Yeah, I think Mark's right. Like, look, you're right. There were all there. If you care about rights, whether they be civil or gender equality, they were all bad choices. But Kavanaugh has a particular way of, he does one thing, for instance, that I really cannot stand as a journalist. He believes in what a lot of people call weaponized free speech. That means that somehow your speech, if you're kind of saying the right conservative things, becomes more important than somebody else's right to not be discriminated against. And I think that's, so like, there are different ways, let's take gay rights. There are different ways of crushing gay rights that don't do as much damage as Kavanaugh will do when he basically decides that homophobia is free speech. He's going to twist things in a certain way that's going to make it kind of particularly painful to watch these decisions that, as Mark says, all four of these shortlisters probably would have come down on the same size. The way Kavanaugh's going to get there is going to be real gross.
So, I mean, we're watching this as Canadians here, as your neighbors, and I know we could fall down the rabbit hole of analyzing American politics and the impact on Americans, but a lingering curiosity here is we know that the border is porous politically, socially, culturally. So if we can start with each one of you, what's your instinct about what the impact might be on a country like this one? Christine?
Well, I think in terms of expanding executive power with this nominee and solidifying more authority in the executive branch, that will have impact, not just for Canada, but elsewhere, and of course, clearly here within the United States. I think that the comments that we've already heard regarding his dismissal of the idea that a sitting president can be indicted bode pretty scary with respect to restraints that can be placed on this president, such as the ongoing Mueller investigation, as well as other types of activity. And that's not just this nominee, but we had a hint of that in the Muslim ban decision that just was affirmed, surprisingly, by the Supreme Court, with the view that a reasonable president may be able to ban based on national security, despite the reality of the remarks, the racist remarks that Trump has made about Muslims. So in terms of restraining, checking the executive, that's not in the cards here. And we saw a bit of that, of course, in the Muslim ban, but the direction of this nominee and the leadership he may take in partnership with Alito, Justice Alito in particular, will be moving it further in the direction of there being no judicial check.
All right, all of you, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will be right back.
For the thousands of single people in the city, it's known as Young and Eligible. It's one of the most popular places in town for singles to meet other singles. Now, you'd think that in a city of 3 million people, that would be easy, but it's not. In fact, Toronto can be a very lonely place. Tonight on Toronto the Dark Side, Cass Rusi and Paul Hunter spend a Friday night with 4 single people looking for love.
It's Friday night in Toronto.
Hi, how you doing?
Welcome to the Jaguar Club.
And we're at one of the many singles bars in the city. It's a different world in here where there are no strings attached.
It's a singles bar, obviously. You're single. I'm a single person. I mean, to be painstakingly honest, to meet the wonderful man, the prince, the horse, the whole thing. But I think while you're doing that, you know it's not going to happen.
Tell me, what's the worst opening line you've heard?
My feet turn you on.
Get out. Did that do anything for you?
No. Clubs like this need to be around in Toronto for people so they can let their, I guess, energies out. They have to tap into something Friday, Saturdays, Thursday nights. This is a good outlet.
People who go to bars are really trying to fill up an emptiness inside them, and they're probably not good candidates for a relationship at that time.
A lot of people don't trust somebody who's really?
You're kidding. A friend of ours just left, and his name is Joe, too.
Would you believe that I'm Joe, too?
At a singles bar near Yonge and Eglinton, it's jammed with people meeting people.
You like this outfit?
Joanne Austin has been single for 10 years, and she comes here a lot. We asked Joanne to show us what a Friday night is like in a singles bar.
And what's your name? Gary. Hello, Gary. My name's Joanne.
Most nights when I go out, I try to look my best, but there are many nights when I have absolutely no expectations at all. I'm just going out with a bunch of friends and having a good time, and if something comes of it, as those fellows earlier were saying, maybe, maybe not.
You come to a place like this hoping you're going to meet somebody, or?
No.
No, neither do I, really.
Doesn't happen. I mean, I like meeting people, right? But I just like doing what I like doing, and you meet people anyway that way.
But aren't you looking for the perfect woman?
No, I had her already. She's gone. I don't want another one.
Are you going to find a Mr. Right, if you will, in a bar? Do you think?
I think your Mr. Right is anywhere. He could be over there at the pizza place. He could be anywhere. So I don't think it's really a matter of where you're going to find him. And there's a million Mr. Rights. I mean, you only want one.
Going out to these places, have you met any interesting women?
Yeah.
Any that you pursued, or maybe, have you got anything going with anyone?
I'm still single.
That may be the one thing most people in this crowded room have in common.
From the smiles, you'd never know the British government was thrust into chaos today. Prime Minister Theresa May welcoming the Austrian Chancellor to 10 Downing Street as the future of Brexit and even her own government suddenly became unclear with the resignation of two high-profile cabinet ministers. Their departure just days before a critical NATO summit and a visit to the UK by the US President. Susan Ormiston has been following this political whirlwind from our London bureau.
This could be Boris Johnson's most audacious zipline act. A fierce Brexit supporter, the flamboyant Foreign Secretary suddenly quit over the Prime Minister's plan to exit Europe. Curiously, he remained hidden inside his government residence today, sending out only stinging words. The Brexit dream, he wrote, is dying, suffocated by needless self-doubt. May's plan gives up too much to Europe, truly heading Britain toward the status of colony.
What we are proposing is challenging for the EU. It requires them...
A wounded Theresa May faced howling opposition, particularly from the Labour leader.
Mr. Speaker, how can anyone have faith in the Prime Minister getting a good deal with 27 European Union governments when she can't even broker a deal within her own cabinet?
Stunning developments began last Friday at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country house, when May pitched her EU exit strategy to her cabinet. Any agreement there was shattered by Sunday. As the senior minister in charge of negotiating that exit, David Davis suddenly quit.
I'm worried that what the European Union will do is simply take what we've offered
and ask for more or wait for more.
The two high-profile resignations weakened fragile negotiations and handed the opposition an opening.
Far from strong and stable, there are ministers overboard and the ship is listing, all at the worst possible time.
The Prime Minister apparently survived the brewing threat of a leadership coup for now. As Boris Johnson slipped out of his official residence late tonight without a word, leaving Britain's Brexit plan further muddled and in the hands of new Brexit and foreign secretaries. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, London.
A reminder, you can always find great photos on our Instagram page. Today, the christening of Prince Louis, the newest royal addition, well, not counting Meghan Markle. Check us out at CBC The National.
David Mitchell's an art dealer with a problem. His reputation's in jeopardy. He's out $80,000, all because of what he's carrying in his briefcase. He thinks he has a rare painting by Tom Thompson, but it's a painting nobody wants.
Well, right now it's worthless. It is quite worthless. There's no question in my own mind that the painting is still dead.
It's worthless because not everyone thinks it's the real thing.
No, I don't think it's an authentic Tom Thompson. But I can't tell you exactly why.
Even those who think it is can't say for sure.
I feel pretty confident that is his. Again, it's guessing.
So bring on the scientists. High tech tackles a highbrow problem. Can they do it? Or will this remain another Tom Thompson mystery? Here's what has people puzzled. An 8.5 by 10.5 painting, just slightly bigger than the standard family photo. A landscape in oil on a thin piece of birchwood. But this is odd. There's a flip side. Different landscape done in a different style. Colors are brighter, brushstrokes are broader. The subject matter, though, on both front and back, is typically Thompson. Algonquin Park, the scene of Thompson's artistic awakening. He did hundreds of oil sketches here, painting on small wood panels just how the wilderness looked and how it felt. He died mysteriously, his body found floating in this lake. Accidental drowning, said the coroner. Murder, whispered the locals. The dark rumors of foul play in his death earned Thompson an enduring place in Canadian folklore. He is this country's best-known artist, and yet he remains a shadowy figure. He was a loner who spent months at a time in the park, often painting 2 or 3 sketches a day. Adding to the Thompson mystique is the fact that he rarely signed his works, and he gave some of his panels away to people who admired them. Today, no one knows for sure just how many Thompsons are out there, and no one can rule out the possibility of one surfacing now.
Caitlin Coughlin turns 18 on Wednesday. Happy almost birthday, Caitlin. But the celebration this weekend was an unbirthday party. Caitlin has Williams syndrome, a developmental disorder, and she was feeling down that she wouldn't be experiencing milestones like other girls her age. So her mom asked family and friends to send love and cards, and well, that call went viral, touching a nerve with other parents. Their party is our moment of the day.
How do you feel about the last 6 months?
6 months? I'm awesome.
It's awesome? You feel awesome?
Yes, Mama.
I think if there's anything to be taken out of all this, it's Caitlin's self-worth has built up her confidence.
And I like the kids when I walk around and I talk to them. Oh, I loved it.
Even the city bus had come to pick her up from our house to bring her to the party. So that was like her limo to the party. It was from 12 to 4 p.m. and everybody stayed from 12 to 4. We had wonderful weather too. I ended up with 200 registered children from all over Ontario that had never been to a birthday party or had kids come to theirs.
See everyone have fun and stuff. hang out, make new friends, have fun.
Even though the theme was a birthday party, the whole goal was to connect children with each other and create friendship. So it worked.
This is a great mom who was worried her little one wasn't going to have friends and has a whole bunch more now.
And maybe the message here is not that it always has to be as elaborate as this party has turned into, but just everyone should have a party to celebrate on their birthday. By the way, there's a surprise. We still don't know what it is for the actual birthday. The mom is not going to reveal that until the last moment. That is the National for Monday, July 9th. Good night.
Good night.